Square Enix is a funny company, because on one hand, it's an incredibly hard task to find many other game studios that can match the quality of the games they've made. They have some truly generational games that have pushed mediums forward and made childhoods. Then you look at the majority of business decisions they have made, and the pain from seeing those decisions is only rivaled by diving headfirst into a wood chipper. Like, let's just think of some of the worst ones they've made. Selling multiple IPs to put crypto in games shortly before it died, like everyone knew it would. Having it be 7 years since the release of Kingdom Hearts 3 with no tangible news on when the fourth one is going to drop, despite the only trailer we got that's, 4 years old. Yes, hello, me from the future here. You might be able to tell that throughout this video, I made the majority of it sometime after the Sony State of Play, as I was really confident in us not getting any new information from Square Enix after that. So you can play a fun little game of seeing which parts were recorded before the Nintendo Direct and which ones were made after it. Little hint, the parts that are actually hopecore were recorded after it because we got some generational news that made this video considerably less doom and gloom. But anyway, back to the video. Well, those business decisions are pretty bad, but up there I would say is their gacha games. Not gacha game, nah, I'm talking about all of them. All of the multiple times they have gone to make one, as a fair bit of them were really bad games that end of service in record time. But aside from that, sometimes they actually made really good gachas that still end of service in record time, or maybe even end of service before they're released. Thank you, Kingdom Hearts Missing Link. At this point, it's known that Square Enix really can't be trusted for gacha games, because why would you play a style of game that incentivizes you to spend money to get characters when the game you are spending money on is coming from a studio that has shut down multiple of these styles of games? And whatever you think the number of gacha games Square Enix has end of service is, I can guarantee you it is much more than that. And I'm going to go through the list of games they shut down, talking about how a good number of them were, why they were shut down, and if they were actually great games. Because there have been some actually really good ones that released, but they're pretty much just lost media now as there's no way to play them. Which is why I wanted to make this video, because when Square Enix makes a good game, it becomes legendary. But when that good game is literally thrown away by the company and forgotten, how can it be legendary? And one such game would be Kingdom Hearts Union Cross. Not within the sense that it was a good game, but more than the sense that it's now lost media. Now, the name in here gets a little confusing, but bear with me. Originally, the game was called Unchained Cross, but they later renamed it to Union Cross, until finally renaming that to Union Cross Dark Road, as there was a different game you could play, Kingdom Hearts Dark Road, inside of Union Cross. Then 1 year after this announcement and renaming of the game, it shut down. Welcome to how Square Enix does business, but they made an actually great announcement alongside the end of service. They said that the game will still be playable in an offline state. Union Cross would be part of the app where you can watch the cutscenes of it. I believe all the gameplay was taken away from that and it was just the cutscenes. And Dark Road was in that app to play as well. But still, overall, it was a good announcement to hear because even though the game itself was terrible, more on why later, the story was actually good. And it still had necessary lore for Kingdom Hearts 3 and 4, which, yeah, wonderful decision to make a huge series of games and place integral lore needed for that series into a gacha game that would end of service. But I mean, hey, at least there was an offline version to watch the cutscenes, right? I mean, surely Square Enix will not just suddenly one day delist the offline version from the app stores. Surely they wouldn't do that for no fucking apparent reason. Yeah, they did that shit. Truly, I wish I could expand more on why they did this, but there's genuinely no explanation. The game was in a perfectly stable offline version, then they just brought it out back and killed it. Evidently they hired Agent 47 for the assassination as well because they did it silently. There's no official statement or explanation as to why they removed it, they just did. Now, aside from the assassination, for how the game itself is, I really can't put this into nicer terms. It was the most greedy cash grab I have ever witnessed. Well, okay, maybe cash grab isn't the most accurate term, because that implies the entirety of it was horrific, but there were some good aspects to the game, like the story. However, aside from that, you had bare bones basic gameplay, pay to win, and power creep that'd make Honkai Star Rail bow in absolute reverence. It was often the case that a banner would drop with what is considered to be the best medal in the game, basically the things you'd use to attack. In a sense, you would gacha for attacks to use instead of a character to use. Then just a few patches after that, they drop a new best medal that power creeps the old one. People always talk about mistakes that brick your account in a gacha game. Thankfully for this game though, even if you roll on a banner that isn't optimal to spend pulls on, give it just a few days and then a new best medal will drop. In my opinion, for a gacha game to make me not hate its monetization method, you need to make it so I feel like I can build an account that will last. like get some good teams, then that'll last me for some years before I eventually want to just get better or different units. And if I played the game for a while, it'll be easy enough to do that. Basically, make it so I can play your game without spending, or spending minimally, without feeling like I am being beat over the head whenever I log into your game. But Kingdom Hearts Unicross was basically a never-ending hamster wheel in terms of its design, from what I've played of it. I remember back when one incredibly broken medal dropped called Kyrie EX, and when you look at the gacha mega threads for that, brother, it is absolute despair. People just dead-ass quitting the game because they couldn't get her. People saying they're just done with how the monetization has been. And when you look at posts about the game's end of service, most comments are just saying like, I used to play it, but I'm glad it's dead. It was the most pay-to-win gacha I have ever played. Which is unfortunate to see because I love the series and like the story in it, but despite that, I could not stomach actually sticking with the game. I genuinely think it is easily the most pay-to-win gacha that Square Enix has made. But that's all there is to talk about for Unicross. Aside from that, there's Diffuse Millie and Arthur, a card game that actually lasted about 3 years. Guardian Cross that lasted 5 years before end of servicing due to low player counts, but then they launched Guardian Codex as a spiritual successor to it, which then ended service in less than a year. Pretty unfortunate, as I actually heard a fair bit of praise for these games. Here we are. This case is interesting. Sinnoh Alice. So, Sinnoh Alice was a gacha game that was directed by Yoko Taro, the creator of the Nier and Drakengard series. So with that, it provides 2 guarantees. 1, it's going to be creative and original as all hell. And 2, it's going to be weird as all hell. Also, one of the composers for the Nier and Drakengard series was also composing music for this game as well. So all in all, actually a pretty damn promising lineup. Now for the game itself, the gameplay was pretty much an auto-battler. The art style was really damn good. It had collabs with Replicant and Automata, which, you know, whenever 2B is thrown into yet another collab, this tweet always pops into my head, bro. I'm sorry. It's generationally true and will probably stay that way for the next couple of years, but my main intrigue in the game was the story. It's a Yoko Taro game, so I'm invested pretty much just in that. I mean, dear God, I suffered through finding a copy of the original Nier for the PlayStation 3 back before Replicant existed because they didn't make a digital copy of the game. And I played all fucking 10 frames of Drakengard 3, so I'm invested in the stories this man can tell. But surprisingly enough, the story has seemed like a mixed bag from everything I heard. The premise is that you're in a world called Library that has a ton of stories in it, and in these stories, the characters want to revive their author to change their own story. And the early ones are variations of classic fairy tales like Red Riding Hood, Snow White, Cinderella, but of course it's not the Disneyfied versions of them. They took the darker tones of the original and changed them around, specifically to make the characters in them the worst versions they can be. Basically a nightmare to live through. Now the sentiment I heard about the early story was that it was more focused on character studies than an overall plot. So what you would get from those worlds and stories being changed was at face value. How much do you know of the original story? Are the changes interesting? But generally, I heard people say it wasn't the main draw of the game. It turns out the guild system was the more enjoyed aspect of it. It was the simple stuff of getting in a guild, fight the bosses, climbing the damage rankings, which of course for a gacha game leads to pay to win taking the main stage, but that's the part I heard the most praise for. However, pay to win or a story people are divided on isn't really the main problem with the game or a large reason as to why it ended serviced. The main problem as to why it did is probably due to one publisher, Nexon. So the game dropped in Japan in 2017, then dropped globally in 2020, 3 entire years later. Why is that the case? Well, the publisher for the global version was meant to be Nexon, but they had delay after delay for the game until around 2019 when the global version of the game, which was on Play stores but yet to be released, was delisted. Well, actually it was in tester mode, so only devs and testers could see the game on the Play Store until around September of that year. It was relisted with PokeLabo being the publisher. I genuinely think that the 3 wasted years of the global version due to Nexon's apparent translation issues with the game, brother how, was a large part of the game not popping off. I mean, dear God, there's only so much shit people are really going to deal with when it comes to waiting for a game to drop as it's actively released in a different region. But even with all this being the case, I can't lie, it doesn't seem the most interesting sell for a game Yoko Taro's working on. Like, I love Nier Automata, but I wouldn't really say its gameplay is the reason why I gave a damn about it. Hell, I could even say that for Nier and Drakengard. Story is what kept me interested in them, but the idea of hearing classic fairy tales rewritten in a darker tone is interesting, but not enough to sell me on a game. I'm more interested in having Yoko Taro make a game with an original cast and sell me on those characters. It's what I think is the biggest selling point of his work. So yeah, in case you couldn't tell, this is a botched transition to talk about Nier Reincarnation. So Nier Reincarnation has been described often as Nier 3, and it was a mobile game that is end of service and is no longer on app stores. Now, I know I'm the guy that plays a lot of gacha games, but I'm just gonna say it. Some of y'all should not be allowed to make gacha games. More specifically, games that are already a part of predefined series shouldn't be allowed to have a canonical installment of the series as a gacha game, unless y'all are actually going to invest in a way to play it when the server shut down. It should not be put onto the fans to carry the flame and put the game into whatever functional state they can, so others getting into the series can know the lore. Some fans of Union Cross were able to make the game's offline version, before it was delisted, available to play, and for Near Reincarnation, there is Project Birdcage. It's a fan website that was made in an effort to preserve the story. Unfortunately though, it's not an offline version, it's more so a website that tries its best to convey the story as if you're reading the game. So it still needs to rely on YouTube videos of the game, but it's not as soulless as getting the lore from a wiki summary. And the lore is something you'd want to know because the game is important. Hell, Yokotaro even described it as Near 3. Generally, within the plot of Reincarnation, it adds more to the lore of the series and its canon. Now, asterisks with that, as even though it's canon, this is a series that often uses multiple branching timelines, so that would be why some contradictions with the plot for the true ending of the games can be found. But knowing how it's important and yet the game is dead with no way to play it, that shit sucks. Thankfully, within the series, you don't need to play all prior games to understand the lore. You can play Dragon Guard 3 without playing 1, Nier without touching the Dragon Guard series, and Automata without playing Nier, which I know most people did. So the situation isn't as dire as Kingdom Hearts, but it's another reason for me to just never want to hear Square whisper the fucking words gacha game. Brother, I swear to God, I'm willing to impose a ban on gachapons within a 1,000-kilometer radius of their studio. So many of their games do not live long, and they seem adverse to making offline versions or, when they make them, actually keeping them on the Play Store. But that's enough about gachas that screw over the ability to read through the lore for a new player in the series. If I continue with this, I'm just gonna be salty. So instead, let's look at the Final Fantasy games. Here, there's a lot more promise. Since you don't need to play the prior Final Fantasy games to know the lore for a new one, there isn't as much of a worry about screwing up the plot. You can pretty easily just do whatever you want to make a really interesting game with beloved characters. So, let's look at some of the ones they made. Final Fantasy Enix, a game in which you get summoned to a world ruled by Bahamut and gotta summon characters from the Final Fantasy series as cards. That, I'm sure a lot of people were asking for this. It lasted 2 years. Final Fantasy Tactics S, you're playing tactics, but focusing more on being in a clan and getting high scores while you gacha for characters. It lasted a year. World of Final Fantasy Melee-O, basically just more of World of Final Fantasy. It lasted a singular year. Okay, so maybe infinite potential doesn't equate actually having quality, but there have been some Final Fantasy gacha games that people said were really good. Final Fantasy Mobius is one of them. It's a gacha game that dropped back in 2015, and for a mobile game of that time, it looks really damn good. Now, it ran for 5 years and had about 20 million players, so all in all, it was a success. The story is about the protagonist waking up on Palamecia with amnesia. In fact, people who are brought to Palamecia from other worlds are called blanks, and they all have amnesia. So, at least they had the basics of a gacha down with the protagonist always having amnesia. Now, I could talk about the actual story of it, but I can't lie. That's secondary to something I really liked about the game when I researched it, the Final Fantasy X collab.
Thanks, I don't think you came here just to die, so let me fill you in on something.
Wow, the protagonist is actually just as edgy as everyone thinks Cloud is.
Ha, 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 ha.
Wait, never mind. He's a dork too. They made Cloud 2 as the protagonist of this game. But the story of the Final Fantasy X collab was actually pretty good. It basically acts as a bridge in between Final Fantasy X and X-2. I wouldn't immediately call it canon, but it's honestly well enough made to where I don't really have a problem with thinking about it as canon. Honestly, if you're a fan of Final Fantasy X, this story is worth checking out. If not, don't go near it. It will spoil both the games for you, so I can't really explain why I think it's so good. But this is what I think well-crafted gachas can do, something that isn't inherently tied to the canon of a series but can give fans of it more. It can justify being a gacha to have that live service status by doing stuff like this, instead of cases where being a gacha ends up hurting the series for newcomers. Basically, you have all these IPs, have fun with them, and tell interesting stories in them that you wouldn't make a full game for, but fans of the series would love. And thankfully, this game isn't fully lost to time, as fans were able to make an offline version of it to play. And in it made some changes like buffing the gacha rates, getting pull currency as drops from enemies, like, you know, shit Square Enix should have done themselves if we're being honest. But another Final Fantasy gacha is Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. It was pretty much like, as the name would suggest, the Dissidia games where all the different protagonists come together for it. Though instead of being a fighting game, it was a turn-based one that lasted for about 7 years. What to expect from it is pretty much in line with how the Dissidia games are in terms of content. Now, naturally, as is the case with this video, Square wiped their ass with the idea of making an online version, but someone on YouTube ended up recording and uploading every single cutscene of the game. The game had 7 years of updates. The playlist with the videos has 1,342 videos. It was over 2 terabytes of footage, just containing all the cutscenes in the game. Man, I can't lie. I wish the suits in Square cared even a fraction about these games like the fans and devs do. Holy shit. This almost didn't come to completion either. Apparently there was about 7 hours left before the server shut down by the time they were done recording everything. But why couldn't the bare minimum be done in preserving this game? Now, with this video, I can't lie, talking over and over about these shutdowns is kinda sad. Cause at the risk of sounding preachy, which I will, but at the same time, fuck it, I don't care. I view video games as art. I genuinely think the medium is so unique in what it can accomplish, and most of the stories I think are incredibly well written and hit me personally have come from games. Which is why I end up being harsh to games I think are cash grabs or soulless, as it feels like a waste of my time. When I'm playing a game that feels like it's designed to just cash in a check, then fuck off, I hate it. Cause I always think to myself, instead I could be playing a generational game that is someone's passion project, something that they love to work on and wanted everyone to enjoy. That's why I generally hate tribalism for games, because I don't view them as playing them means I need to shit talk other rival fandoms or whatever. Bitch, they're video games. You can play and enjoy whatever you want. All this mudslinging is stupid as hell. Like, dear God. In my last video, I made a joke calling Genshin Impact a legendary video game because it has legendary 3D animated porn. And the thing is, yeah, it was a good enough punchline for that segment, but the reason I said Genshin instead of like Overwatch or some shit is because I wanted to piss off people who were tribalistic by them hearing the words Genshin. Then, with hearing how it's a joke, they'd laugh and their cortisol would spike back down. But motherfuckers genuinely took that shit seriously. I had comments shit talking me for calling Genshin legendary. Brother man, what? Like, let me tell you, easiest way to rage bait a gacha player, just say Genshin does something better than their favorite game. Oh, woo, Genshin's combat is better. Oh, Arknights. Genshin's character designs are better. Oh, Limbus Company. Genshin's story is better. It'll work every time, I guarantee it. But with viewing games as art, I want them to bare minimum at least be respected by the studio that made it. And that would be, at least for live service ones, when at EOS's drop an offline version. One that actually stays around. Which is why these next 2 games are ones I got to praise Square Enix for, and there's something that I not only wish they did more, but was seen as the standard in the industry. Octopath Traveler 0 is a fully released game that was based off the gacha game Square made called Champions of the Continent. Now, Champions of the Continent didn't actually end of service. Well, it technically did, but that was just deleting off the App Store under Square Enix and shifting operations of the game to NetEase, with them essentially re-releasing it on the App Store with players able to transfer their accounts. So the gacha still exists, you can play it now, but there's a separate fully made game that is based off of the gacha game. It's not one-to-one, the story has been shifted around and gacha elements have of course been taken out, but this is pretty much what I view to be the best case scenario of these games on the end of service, and this one didn't even shut down. They took the game and made a single player game inspired by it. That is what I love to see. It preserves the game for people in the future to actually play and enjoy, and it's not alone. I'm glad this video didn't drop just a few days earlier, because just recently it was announced that Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, a gacha that EOS'd, is also getting an offline version. Again, more in line with how Octopath Travelers is, with the gacha acting as the foundation for the new game, which is called Final Fantasy Resonance. It's in a sense pretty much a remake of the gacha. The story in it just covers season 1 of the game, but they changed a lot of stuff, like the game not being node-based but having a world to walk around in, dungeons put in to get summons, gameplay mechanics being changed around, party size being updated. From what it's looking like, the game feels like a remake of Brave Exvius as a single player game. This is what I love. This is what I hope Square can do more of. Honestly, if there's one wish I got, it's that in a year or so from now I could look back at this video and it's aged like a corpse in a swamp, as Union Cross and Near Reincarnation have offline remakes made for them. And I mean, yeah, the other games I mentioned too, but like, brother man, I'm heavily biased, so, there's a priority list I got, and them two are at the top. I really hope that as a studio, Square Enix either just stays out of making gacha games as canon installments of their series as blocked, or, if they do that, commit to releasing offline versions of non-gacha remakes of those games. I will still say that yeah, even with all this news, Square does still have a horrible reputation for gacha games, as the remakes are nice, but the track record of having so many die doesn't exactly inspire confidence in playing a new gacha from them. but I can really appreciate the shift they're doing to making full games. As I know when Arknights dies, I'm gonna want an offline version of it. When Limbus doesn't have story left to tell, they better keep the servers up or make it playable without them. End of the day, it just sucks to see a game you love die and have no way left to play it. It should be the standard that these games have a way to play them after EOS, but that's it for a brief look into Square Enix's attempt at gacha games. They did some good, some bad, most died, but I think the standard that is being set with remakes is something that I really like, and I hope in the future more studios adopt that.